The Power of Place. Purple Heart recipient Paul Hellweg makes his living with words. An article in the Westerly Sun on December 29th, 2023 by Nancy Burns Fisaro. It was on his third return trip to Vietnam that Purple Heart recipient Paul Hellweg finally began to find the peace and love he had been seeking. Hellweg, 78, a longtime freelance writer who lives in Westerly with his wife Sophie and her 7-year-old daughter Michelle, served in Vietnam from May 1968 to April 1969, first with the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, later as an advisor to Vietnamese Regional Forces Popular Forces Platoon. It was in 2005, said the Bloomington, Illinois native, as part of his therapy to revisit the places of pain that haunted him, that the peace began to take hold. I came home from Vietnam with a serious case of PTSD, said Hellweg, explaining that one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder is the inability to maintain healthy relationships. On his third trip in 2005, he said, "I fell in love with the country and the people." A longtime freelance writer who has published 12 books, dozens of articles and columns, more than 250 poems, and several hundred other works, Hellweg also found love. In 2016, I married Sophie, a Vietnamese woman, he said. I lived alone for almost 50 years, he said with a slight laugh. Now I'm 78, going on 55, and I hope to be around to see my daughter safely off to college. It was a few days before Christmas, and Hellweg, whose military decorations also include 2 Bronze Stars, was at home writing, something he has been doing since he was a 6-year-old. It all started with his older brother, Robert, Hellweg explained with another small laugh as they took a break from work to talk on the phone. Robert is 2 years older than I, Hellweg said, and when he was 8 and I was 6, he announced that he was going to write a novel. Not to be upstaged by his older brother, and with a full-blown case of sibling rivalry, the 6-year-old little brother, Paul, said he was going to do the same. The funny thing is, said Hellweg with a slight laugh, he never finished, but I did. I found my calling. I haven't stopped writing since. His brother, who is now retired and lives in Wellesley, Massachusetts, went on to become an acoustic engineer. Although he majored in history when he was a student at Knox College, a nationally ranked liberal arts college in Galesburg, Illinois, Hellweg, one of 2 sons of Robert and Frankie Hellweg, continued to write. It was when he was a student at Knox College that Hellweg joined the Reserve Officers Training Corps, a college program that offers students a chance to study then serve after they complete their degree. My version is that there was not a war going on when I joined the ROTC, but by the time I graduated, there was, Hellweg said. 3 days after I graduated, I joined the Army and was off to Vietnam. Since his return from Vietnam, Hellweg has been writing for his living and for his healing. I write almost every day, said Hellweg. I regularly work on poetry and short fiction, but my main project is my memoir, and that's a work in progress. Hellweg's first book of poetry, Ode to a Drunken Muse, was published by Alien Buddha Press in 2019. His collection of Vietnam poems, When Eagles Vie with Valkyries, is being published by Main Street Rag Press and is set to arrive in the spring. There are myriads of poetry collections based on the war in Vietnam, he wrote in an email, but my book, When Eagles Vie with Valkyries, takes a uniquely different approach by being written in second person. The poems focus more on life after the war than the war itself, he said, and show a path to recovery from PTSD. The author of such books as The Insomniac's Dictionary and reference titles like the American Heritage Children's Thesaurus, Hellweg has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and many Best of the Net awards. He writes regularly for the online publication Vietnam War Poetry and for Peace Voice, a program of the Oregon Peace Institute that is devoted to changing U.S. national conversation about the possibilities of peace and justice and the inadvisability of war and injustice. His pieces are often syndicated and picked up by newspapers across the country, like his recent piece, Go Outside, Feel Better, Save the Climate, which discusses the health benefits of ecotherapy and offers tips to combat climate change. His short fiction has appeared in Asimov's, the North American Review, and a variety of other magazines and journals, which can be viewed on his website, www.paulhellweg.com. For many years, Hellweg lived in California and was an assistant professor at California State University at Northridge, where he taught classes in journalism, anthropology, and literature with a specialty in adventure recreation and wilderness literature. After he and Sophie met and married, they decided to move from the mountains of California to the East Coast, so Sophie, a marine scientist with a master's degree from the University of Tasmania, Australia, could find work in her profession. At first, the Hellwegs lived in Groton, where they rented an apartment, and Sophie had an epiphany and a career change. She was having so much fun with her daughter that she decided to switch careers. So she went back to school for a degree in early childhood education, said Paul. Meanwhile, upon the advice of a man they met, Upon the advice of a man they met at their Groton apartment complex, the Hellwegs decided to venture into Westerly. "He kept telling us to look in Westerly," Paul said. "He told us we'd love it." And we did. So much so that they immediately began looking for a house to buy. In March 2020, they found the perfect one, very close to Springbrook School, where Michelle is now a student. Sophie, meanwhile, received an associate's degree from Three Rivers Community College and now works as an aide at State Street School. It wasn't until later that Hellweg noticed the small highway signs with purple hearts that greet travelers to town, noting that Westerly is a Purple Heart town and part of the Rhode Island Purple Heart Trail. "It's actually kind of cool," said Hellweg thoughtfully. "It's nice to be appreciated." Okay.